Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. Today, we are going to do a little bit different style here. We're going to be responding to a creator that both Darren and I watch pretty frequently. Now, before we get into it, we have a couple little disclaimers. First of all, if you can't tell already, we're going to be responding to a few videos that Denise Fenzi has made today on TikTok. I really like Denise. I enjoy following her. I think she puts out some really good content. And so in no way is this to attack her or discredit her or show any negativity towards her whatsoever. She just brings up some really good points and highlights them in an eloquent way, I believe, and touches on a lot of different subjects that both Darren and I feel pretty passionately about. So we're going to comment more so to the topics and her points as opposed to her directly as a person. On TikTok, I will say sometimes when you're commenting in such short captions, it can come across a little bit negative. And I find that Denise is really good at coming up with topics that are more so hypothetical, theoretical, thought-provoking, very critical thinking type of things. And I really enjoy that because I'm analytical. I'd like to think of myself as a critical thinker. And so sometimes when I play devil's advocate, I can see where it may come across like I'm trying to poke holes or be a little bit nasty when in reality that is not my intention whatsoever. I just want to be a part of the dialogue and share my personal perspective. So that being said, I think I've covered everything.
Yeah.
If Denise is watching this, hi Denise. Okay, here we go. So let's start at the beginning. Denise posts a video yesterday. And the caption here, it's really important. It says, I'm talking about dog sports here. The issues are different for pet dog trainers. So that's really important because it kind of frames the conversation from a dog sport perspective, which both Darren and I have experience in.
Yeah, we strictly do mostly like IGP. So that's mostly the lane that we stay in. So
yes. And Denise comments on how fixated I am with IGP. So that also plays into the scope of things. We're talking about dog sport, specifically Schutzhund, IPO, IGP, whatever you want to call it. Here we go.
So if talented trainers can do fine with less compulsion or none, why don't they? Because that may not be their driver. When I was competing in competition obedience, there were plenty of people who were routinely getting scores of 198 to 200. And that's pretty good out of a 200.
That's really good. Okay, so 198 to 200 out of 200, that's nearly perfect scores. So that tells me that the people that are not only competing, therefore competitive, and getting those kind of scores, near perfect scores, they're highly competitive. Okay, so that's important because it kind of shapes a goalpost. That's a buzzword that you'll hear lots throughout this conversation of this conversation.
I also could turn out those scores. But if your motivation is to win, then it's smart to do what other people are doing who are winning because it's a much surer deal. You'll have a lot of problem-solving help. If you run into problems, people will support you. So my motivation came from a different place. I chose to do things differently, but it wasn't because my motivation was to win. If your motivation is to win, you're kind of smart to just do what you've always done and what has already been demonstrated to be impactful.
Okay, so my question then to that is, okay, how do people then progress? How does dog training and ideologies and methodologies advance? Because this comes across to me like that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If what you're currently doing, i.e. balanced trainers, works and you're getting high scores and you're achieving your goals and your definition of success is winning and high scores, then there's really no reason to switch.
Yeah, exactly.
Is kind of what I'm understanding here.
yeah, you stick to your methodologies that you base your training on. And if you're successful that way, you can basically stick with that.
There's just no question in my mind that there are many very, very successful and talented trainers who could learn how to train force-free and would be quite successful and maybe way more successful than any of the rest of us.
Okay, so I interpret that as she's saying balanced trainers who are already successful with their balanced training methods, in her opinion, can be quite successful or even more successful than others transferring over to using force free. So we've already kind of talked about how, okay, stick to what works for you, but if you're a balance trainer and you do have whatever motivation to switch over to force free, she believes you're more likely to be successful because you have experience, you understand dogs, you've already been in the training space, in the dog sport space. So therefore, it'll be easier for you.
Already very good competitors, but they have to have a reason. They have to have a motivation. And if they're not motivated, then people don't change without a reason. If you're turning out almost perfect scores and winning huge events, there's no reason to change unless something is driving you either from the inside, you have ethical reasons, or from the outside. Let's say the laws change and you no longer have access to the same tools. But it's not their ability to train that way. It's their desire to learn to do it and take on the risk that comes with change. My favorite students when I was teaching in person were crossover trainers because they already came with a bunch of really valuable skills from their balanced skill set. And then I just had to teach them new ways of doing things.
Okay. So lots to kind of unpack here. So for me, it's like, okay, we're talking now about motivation. We're talking about change. Obviously, change is hard. Obviously, people don't necessarily like to embrace it. And I agree with her that there has to be some sort of reason, desire, motivation to change. My viewpoint is if you take a balanced trainer and they're already super successful and they're doing great with their methods, and they can do equally as great using, say, force-free methods, I feel as though my personal opinion is that there would be people changing over. There would be people embracing that because I do feel like force-free, the more knowledge we get about it, the more people that are, discussing it, the more wins that they get within the force-free community, big and small, it does have a ripple effect, and balance trainers are aware of it. Sometimes they have no choice because it's on social media.
Laws in countries and stuff, you have no choice but to change because they no longer let you use the tools that you normally use. So,
right. And so, okay, when we go down to a few comments here, I had made a comment saying, this is where I would genuinely love to see current high-level competitors actually showing their force-free training and exactly how they're doing it. Because I think that is really important to see, whether you're a new trainer, a balanced trainer, even a fellow force-free trainer. It doesn't matter what you label yourself as. I think that force-free trainers, my perspective, especially on TikTok, is that there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of claims, and I personally don't see the proof. I don't see the training. I don't see
the results.
The results. And of course, going back to a dog sport lens, an IGP specific lens, I don't see it. So Denise comments back and says they do, amazing FCI obedience, rally agility, nose work, etc. And my page has a ton of specific steps to follow. And so this is where I was like, whoa, hold on. I got to clarify, because I am a strong believer, and so is Darren, that we will never give advice or comment anything beyond like our just personal opinion that has very little value on any other sport or anything that we personally don't do, train, compete with. Like, I will never make a comment about any one of these things because I don't have any real knowledge or experience. So I'm not going to comment on that.
We kind of, make comments on agility training or, whether force-free or balance training, which one is best, because like we don't dabble into that. So, there's a lot of successful in both areas, in force-free and balance training, and they both work. And it's just what's best for you and what's best for the dog that you have at that point in time too, right?
Yeah, so. And the situation. There's a lot that goes into, it's unfortunate that people get labeled as you're either force-free totally, or you're balanced, or you're this, and you get into this box. That's like a conversation for another day. And so at this point in the conversation, I said I should clarify, I mean IGP specifically. Okay, so now I'm stating kind of the scope of what I'm going to be asking about and talking about, because that's what I know and that's what I do. I say I hear trainers every day on TikTok discussing it, but they don't compete or show the training. Maybe some do. I personally haven't seen it, and I figured maybe Denise would know of a direction she could point me in. And she does. She says, follow these 3 people on Instagram and Facebook. And then she says, also, you will learn a lot from SCI obedience, similar types of dogs and exercises.
Yeah. So also, like, if you're force free and you're out there listening and you compete in the IGP sport, shoot us a message, and I'd love to see your training and what your successes are, and I'd like to see what's happening in your world of force free in our sport. So
for sure. So I thanked her, and I said I'll definitely look into them. And I said, going back to what she had said in her video, I have never heard of anyone consistently getting scores of 298 to 300 in IGP using force free. So now I've used the scores of IGP because it's not at a 200, it's at a 300, it's a 3-phase sport. And so she had listed that in the video, talking about that range of scores. So now we're not talking about just passing. We're not talking about, being average or moderate. We're talking about getting 198 to 200. That's a V. Like, you're in the highest percentile when you're getting near perfect, if not perfect score. So that's why I used that exact reference of 298 to 300 in IGP using force free. I have never heard of it. That's genuine. That's just a fact. It's not that I don't want to have heard anybody getting those scores. It's not that I hope nobody ever gets those scores. I personally today have never heard of that. And so maybe Denise has. She says, I don't know anyone, regardless of training method, who consistently turns out those scores in that sport. So that's where I said, well, potentially not 300s every trial, but routinely there are some that I know personally achieving over 290 consistently, and even 290 is impressive, whether you're balanced or force-free. And that is true. I mean, Darren and I both know some high-level competitors. Darren's one of them who consistently gets those scores. And so I said, it doesn't even have to be score specific. You're talking about the scores. You're talking about winning and success. And so I understand that that's all relative. Everybody's going to have their own definition of success and of winning. But from a outside generic society perspective, when we talk about winning, we talk about high level, we talk about ultimate success. We're talking about 200 out of 200 or 300 out of 300. That's elite. Okay. So who then is winning IGP trials or taking high-end trial or going to the WUSV training force free? So
at this point in time, I don't know of any personally, or have heard of any. I know of people that tried, but as of right now, there hasn't been that I know of.
Likewise. So then Denise says to me, I think you missed the point of the video. I said there's no motivation to change if your goal is high scores. Just follow people who do that. So this is where the conversation, in my opinion, is taking a slightly different direction. And that is if all you care about is scores, then that's all you care about. And this is where I believe that you can care about more things than one at any given time.
Absolutely.
So I care about the health, the well-being, the happiness of my dog. I care about my enjoyment. I care about my safety. I care about obviously doing my best. I care about reaching my dog's fullest potential. I care about the relationship between me and my dog. I care about where I'm taking my dog to trial. I'm thinking about a bunch of different things at once. Yeah. My motivation is not limited to just one thing. It's not all I care about is winning. Now, having winning or being successful or reaching your highest potential or getting the highest points possible for you and your dog, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Okay. I don't think that when you're talking about, like she says, dog sports specifically, sport being the key word, that implies a competition. Competition implies being competitive. And I don't believe that there's anything wrong with certain people being there to compete and to be competitive. Now, that being said, there's nothing wrong with people going there to achieve a title and to make a new, to be successful, because that's a huge success in and of itself. Yeah. Just getting on the trial field is a win.
And it's not such an easy task either.
No.
Because, you have to look at the dog that you have. You may not have the dog that you can bring to a high level, but passing and achieving a title with that specific dog, or your abilities and your that you have personally on how to train, or the people that you train with, just the pass is very successful.
Of course. And there's no discrediting those that do just pass, or they only, achieve a BH or a 1 or whatever the case may be. Stepping on the trial field and achieving anything is a huge accomplishment. And in no way do I diminish that from anybody. But we have to understand here that the conversation has taken on a different shape, and we're talking about winning, success, high scores, competition. Okay. So I said then, why do force-free trainers say that you can achieve the exact same results as somebody who trains balanced in IGP without doing it? It brings the question of, in my mind, like playing devil's advocate and critically thinking, does that then imply that force-free trainers don't have the desire to win? Because if we're talking about motivation and it being singular, it's either you have the desire to win, so you're doing things the balanced way because that's what you know, and that's what majority of the people that are winning trials are doing. That's all you're doing. Why? Why can't you be force-free and still win? Is it because it's impossible? Is it because we don't know how to do it? Is it because majority of the force-free community doesn't do dog sports? They don't do IGP? Like, where does the train kind of get derailed in this? Because I see on TikTok all the time, different trainers, and it's definitely not just Denise, lots of people that identify themselves as force-free trainers say that you can achieve high results, high levels in bite sports, in IGP specifically. So my question is, who? Like, where are these people? Tell me, because I want to know, and I want to genuinely see what they're doing and how they're doing this. And she says, those are different questions altogether than what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about why successful trainers simply don't change. And I would argue the reason is because it hasn't been done. Why would a balanced trainer who is successful in IGP, getting high scores, going to the WUSV, change to being force-free if they want to maintain the same high level results? And if they do change for other motivators, right? They want to embrace that force-free training style and their results decrease. Why is that? Because we know that they've already gone to a high level. They've already won. They've already, gotten their high points through balanced training methods. So a professional trainer, one who is successful in that way, transfers over. Why did the wheels fall off? Why is there a decrease in their results? I'm not sure.
And a lot of it kind of goes down to like their beliefs in ethics, so.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people nowadays that consider that more in their training. And like I said earlier, force-free is becoming more prevalent. And a lot of people are trying to embrace that. And it comes, at the responsibility, I believe, of the people that are currently force-free trainers that are saying that all of these things are possible, to show that it is and to help people achieve those goals. And I said that essentially, when I comment back saying, but if somebody is successful why would they change if they don't see others being equally successful with that other method? And that was kind of the end of that thread there. So then moving on, she makes a video response back to me from my comment. So here we go.
So this comment came on a thread where I said, I'm pretty confident that balance trainers could be perfectly successful using force-free training methods if they wanted to, because they already have a lot of qualities that are involved in learning how to compete successfully, to win, but they don't necessarily have a motivation. I mean, if you're doing really well, then why would you change, right? And so this person kind of took the conversation in a different direction and is saying, you're talking about winning, who's winning an IGP or taking a high-end trials or going to the WSB? So they've picked a specific sport that they're interested in, and they're, looking at the absolute top.
Specific sport, because that's what I train, that's what I know, and nowhere in her previous comments or videos did she say that what she's talking about does not apply specifically to IGP. She's talking about dog sports. It's a dog sport. So there's my question. And we're talking about the absolute top because we're talking about success, winning, high scores.
I'm going to tell you a quick story, because I understand this logic training very well, and this is no shade to you, but let me just tell you, when I got my obedience championship, people said it was the first one done force-free. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm credited with that with my first dog. And before that happened, everybody kept saying, well, as soon as somebody shows that it can be done with a dog force-free, then I'll do it. So I did it. And at that time, I actually believed that they meant that. Like, I know more about people now, but I thought they meant it. And so I did it. And then they said, oh, it was a fluke. You'll never do it again. I did it again. Now I'm thinking, okay, now they're going to. So what happened? Did anybody actually change? No. People who.
Okay. So this is really unfortunate. And I understand exactly where Denise is coming from with this, because I see it all the time, not just in dog sports and not just with force-free. Okay. This happens even in the balance community, where people will just naturally try to discredit anybody's success, anybody's achievement. It would be, well, you're a balance trainer, so you only achieve that because you use an e-collar, because you're lazy, because you use a prong, and that's lazy. And it would be more impressive if you did it force-free, and you're old school, and it's because of the dog that you have, and it's because of X, Y, and Z. It's because of the dog's bloodlines. It's because of their drives. Like, there's always a reason that people have, instead of just being happy for another's success. That's just the world we live in. So it's unfortunate that Denise has experienced this with her accomplishments. But I don't think that this is just limited to Denise's experience, or even as far to say this is a force-free community problem.
Already on board, we're like, yay, you did it, yay. And people who weren't on board were like, yeah, but you didn't do it with that fill in the blank. A male, a sporting dog, you name it, they threw it out there. Okay, well, I got smarter, right? I started to learn that people are actually not that interested in what they see. From there, it became, well, nobody's won the National Obedience Championship, so that's the highest you can go, right? And then a couple years ago, somebody won it using force-free. And since that time, more and more people are succeeding force-free. But frankly, while it is true that many people do it, most people acknowledge now that you can absolutely do competition obedience without compulsion. And I guarantee you, 10 years ago, nobody said that. They said,
okay, so that just goes to prove my point, that if 10 years ago, nobody said you could do that, because at that point in time, nobody had done that. And now they're saying you absolutely can do that because people like Denise have done that, and they have accomplished high level things using force-free. That's how positive change is made. Okay. It's not going to happen overnight. Communities and methodologies and ideologies and thought is not going to just change overnight. So it's these small or big wins within the force-free community that ultimately is going to, over time, have a much bigger impact. And Denise is essentially stating that through this example, where as a trailblazer, as somebody a while back doing this for the first time, for the second time, gradually achieving more and more, it has then become more acceptable, more widely recognized.
Yeah.
Other people are doing it. It's becoming not impossible because it is possible because it has been done.
Exactly. And just because it's been done through a limited amount at this point in time doesn't mean that everybody else has to change their training to make everybody else happy just because they were successful at doing it all force free. Really.
Right.
Impossible. I've heard this over and over again. It hasn't really changed the culture of the sport because the culture of the sport is still rooted in compulsion. It's a traditional sport. When you point out something like IGP or whatever, and then you say, well, you just need to see something winning, I know from experience that that's not really true. Like, you might believe that, but it's not true.
I do genuinely believe that. I do think that having somebody win, say, a national IGP championship or the WUSV using genuinely force free, and we may never know what goes on behind the scenes. And I don't want to discredit somebody, but I'm saying, like, for all things being equal, if somebody genuinely does win a large championship, especially the ultimate, which is the WUSV, using force-free methods and can back that up and to show it, I do think it would be a huge step for the force-free community. If nothing else, it wouldn't do any harm to them. Okay. And so that's where it shouldn't be something that's like defensive. It should be, I really hope that we can get to that point, and I really hope that at some point it becomes reality. Now, there's a big difference between saying, my opinion is that it's possible, or one day, it may be possible, or potentially it's possible, versus it has been done. When we're talking about the facts and we're talking about somebody has actually done it versus I think one day somebody can, those are two very different things. And I do think there is a big difference between the two. I'm not sure if, like Denise is saying, it's just me who personally thinks that or not, but her example previously of how over time these accomplishments have paved a way for the force-free community, and a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later, it's become more prevalent and widely known and accepted. That, to me, is strong evidence.
That person did it with one dog, or maybe they were correcting their dog in private or whatever, and that's why I don't really get involved in these conversations. If you want to learn force-free, if you actually really care and you're driven, you don't need to see somebody win the WSB. You just need to see somebody doing better than you're doing. And I don't know how you're doing. I don't know what kind of scores you're getting. And you'd be pretty happy to say, you know what, I just want to learn. Why don't I start with tracking? Because lots of people do tracking without compulsion. I want to learn obedience. Lots of people can teach you that. You would start with what you could get because you would be fundamentally interested in the topic. And if you're not, that's okay. But that is
But it's not the issue, because you can be fundamentally interested in the topic, but still hold true to your goals. Okay. So if all things were equal and lots of people were winning WUSV and lots of people were out there showing their training using force-free methods and being successful, I personally do believe that a lot of new trainers, a lot of current balance trainers would be adopting those methods. And I don't know for sure. Obviously, I can't speak for other people, but I know that I would. I know that I would genuinely take an interest into understanding how these people are doing that and how they're training new methods on the same exercises, the same behaviors.
Yeah. And I can speak for myself because, like, being a balanced trainer, like, and training is about stealing. You steal the best of what people have to offer, and you see it all over the world. And, like, if there's a force-free method to teach dumbbells, I taught the hold on a dumbbell force-free, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? We take bits and pieces of everything and we throw it in together, and we use what works for us. So,
Right. And that's where it becomes individual. And like Denise comments back to me, she says that I'm coming from a different philosophical place. She says, I love training. I love what I get from Force Free. Scores are nice, but not the driver. Okay. I also love training. I love my dogs. Scores may not be the primary driver, but they are a driver. I don't think that there's anything wrong with having your goals include scores. And so that's what I said. I commented back and I said, I understand that. But what if they are for someone? Is there anything wrong with wanting to reach the top?
That's what I'm in it for. I want to reach the top. I want high scores. I want to be the one on the podium. You know, it's like there's nothing wrong with that.
I don't think so. And then somebody else comments, the question there is what someone will do to win, not that they want to win. And so this is where I feel things are kind of going off in a different direction, because saying that you want to win does not automatically imply that you will do anything to win.
Or be unethical or abusive or anything like that to win a competition.
Right.
Because if you're really going to go that far, it's going to show in your dog and your training anyways. So
exactly. So obviously we're not talking about those kind of things. And so it has nothing to do with how far somebody will go to win or how unethical or anything like that. And so I kind of bring it back, or I try to at least. And I say, well, no, my question is, if it's possible to win using Force Free, then why is no one winning? Why has nobody currently won major trials using Force Free? Genuine question.
Specifically in the IGP sport.
Well, of course, yeah. Specifically. Now, that's not saying that one day somebody couldn't win, or I hope that they don't, or it's impossible. Nothing like that. You know, I'm genuinely just curious and just stating the fact that as of today, nobody, as far as I know, has won WUSV using force-free methods. That's not an opinion. Okay, that's a fact. Whether I like it or not, whether anybody likes it or not, that's just the way that it is. And so my fundamental issue is that people are making, primarily from my experience, force-free trainers are making these concrete claims without concrete proof, saying it is possible, you can do it, with my methods, with my training, with my program, you can achieve the exact same results that you would from a balanced trainer. But yet, they don't post them trialing, they don't post their clients trialing, they don't post like credentials in the form of trials or scores or anything concrete. So then I said, things can be, they're not mutually exclusive. You can love training, you can love your dog, but you can also care about winning and about the result. And I think that, when I ask her, who are you supposed to learn from then? It's a genuine question, because there's a lot of people that I see on a regular basis commenting on even like our videos and commenting on other people's videos, asking genuine training advice. People are hungry to learn how to solve the problems that they have with their dogs, whether it's I want to do an intro into a sport, into IGP, or just pet dog things. There's always a need for people when it comes to their dogs. And so I said, who are you supposed to learn this from then? And she says, pay money for classes and seminars, online classes, seminars, and private lessons. And again, I said, well, from who? There's tons of force-free trainers on TikTok, and they say that it's possible, but yet they don't do it themselves.
Yeah, they don't have the credentials, in specific sports, that in the bite sports, right? They keep saying, that it's possible, but there's no credentials out there proving it.
Right. And then she says, when I was training professionally, it was a pretty small number who are trying to get exceptionally high scores. Most just want to play the game, which is fascinating to me. And I commented that to her and I said, I'd be so curious, like why that is or why that was. And I said, like, what is the game, like specifically that you're referring to? And isn't competition designed to be competitive? So why is such a pretty small number trying to get exceptionally high scores? I don't know. And she says, if your driver is exceptionally high scores, then find someone who has done that and make that your priority. And I said, well, that's my point exactly. Like who in Force Free has exceptionally high scores in IGP? And if there's no one, then why is that? And then why do all these Force Free trainers on TikTok claim that it can be done? So, you can kind of see that we're having like the same kind of dialogue back and forth, kind of circular, and somebody else chimes in and says, yeah, well, but isn't that moving goalposts? Earning titles, even IGP3, is not enough now. It has to be perfect scores. Also, she says, I would say that just passing is achievement enough. Aren't titles supposed to be the mark of success in a sport?
That's an individual's choice, whether you're just want to, if you're in the sport just to pass and achieve a title and say you did it, or whether you want to be working towards to be the next world champion or regional champion or national champion, right? So
right. And again, we've already said like there's nothing wrong with wanting to just pass or get a title, or that's your best and you're happy with that. There's no diminishing that accomplishment. Okay. But that accomplishment may not be enough for everyone. And that's where we have to acknowledge both sides. We can't just only praise those who have a certain goal and then demonize those who have a different goal. And so I am coming from a different perspective because in full transparency, and I commented this, I personally would want above average 70s, which is passing in IGP across all three phases. Personally, I would aim for my absolute best. That's just me. Whether I achieve that or not is a separate point. But my goal every time I step on the field is I want to do my best possible for my sake, for Darren as my coach's sake, and for my dog's sake.
Yeah, you have to remember too, it's a 3-phase sport, so it's very, very difficult to get V scores in all 3 phases.
Right.
It's not something that happens every time. So you also have to look at, it's like, is it your day where all the stars align that, your dog nails every exercise? So,
and I said, success is relative and individual. Personally, for me, that this would be my goal. And she says, your mind is obviously made up about this topic. I, for one, look forward to the expansion of the sport and seeing gentler methods competing. I said, as do I, which is why I'm commenting and so involved in this discussion. And I said, but there's nothing wrong with being competitive and having goals and wanting to win. Okay, so we have to kind of acknowledge both sides. And I said, your personal goals may not reflect everyone's, neither may mine. There's nothing wrong with either. All I'm saying is that there has to be consideration for those with the high desires. I said, I know that the methods of learning, it's a matter of why would I, because going back to what Denise said about, different ways to hire somebody. And I said, yeah, I understand the different, methods of learning. It's more a matter of why would I or anybody hire someone for a specific result that they haven't achieved or nobody that they've trained has achieved that? Who would do that? Like, in no sport in any of my past lives or past sports or anything would I ever reach out to somebody and pay them money or join their team or take their advice to heart and genuinely apply it if I go to them with a specific goal and they personally haven't achieved it or nobody that they have helped or trained has achieved it. I don't know of many people that would do that. And I would say in this day and age, this society, credentials and experience and having proof behind what you're saying matters more than ever because there are so many substitutes. There's so many different people and methods and opinions, and everybody's looking for the answer.
Well, one thing I was told years ago, and I still follow this as of today. You're only as good as the people that you hang out with. So if you hang out and train with the top that there is and their methodologies and that kind of thing, you have more of a chance to be on that kind of level. You
Right.
know, but if you're training with somebody who has only achieved a BH, well, their level isn't as high, and they may not be able to take you to a higher level that you want to go to. So,
Right. And she says back to me, I don't think that the argument is that force free gets high scores, but that force free dogs can be competitive and earn titles. Okay. Well, that's totally different. Okay. Never did I ever say that force free methods don't work for certain goals, for certain dogs, certain sports. I know that you can train a dog force free and get a title and pass in IGP. That's not what we're debating. And those goalposts, the scope of the conversation wasn't defined by me. It was defined by Denise's original video where she's talking about 198, 200. That's not just passing. Okay, that is a dream score, a perfect score. And so I said back to this commenter, I said, okay, then what is competitive? Like, what's the definition of competitive? Is it just passing? Denise specifically used the example of 198 to 200. That's perfect score. So as soon as the numbers are brought up, now we're talking about scores. Now they become relevant because you're setting that as a target and saying that's possible. And I'm saying I've never personally seen that. And again, the force-free trainers frequently say that those kind of results can be achieved. It's not just Denise. A lot of people say that high results can be achieved, but yet I don't see it being done. And I'm curious what a force-free trainer would tell somebody that goes to them saying, hey, I have a high drive working dog. I want to do IGP. I want to go to the WUSV. I have high desire to win and to be successful. I'm genuinely curious what somebody in that position would say. Now, really quickly, this other commenter said something that I think is really important to note here. And this person says, I will say this, as a balance trainer, my colleagues want to be the least compulsive as possible, which has changed over the years. So other people in the industry, from a balance trainer perspective, are saying that they're noticing a trend towards more force-free methods. And so this just goes to show that there has been a change over the years and that there is a demand and that there are balance trainers that they themselves or the clients that they work with are wanting to embrace those kind of methods. And that goes back to my original comment. Well, where do they go to do that? How do you train people to train their dogs using these methods and still achieving their goals? It shouldn't be one or the other. It shouldn't be you either want to win, you want to be super successful, or you want to be force-free. There should be a way that this can be combined. And if there's not, force-free trainers, I believe, need to be transparent and say that. Okay, that's enough of that video. So then Denise comments back here.
You're talking about me, that I was talking about winning, and I said those numbers. Yeah, but I was talking about obedience. I gave an example from my experience. Almost all dog sports have evolved over time. And I mean, even agility. I started in agility when it first started out, and we dragged dogs through the weed pulls. So sports evolve over time. You have picked one sport, and you're super focused on one sport, and then you're making everything about that one sport. And I'm not that interested in that one sport.
Okay, and that's fine. I'm not expecting you to be super interested in IGP or interested to the same level that I am. And maybe I misunderstood, the original video of all dog sports are talking about dog sports here, because IGP is a dog sport and it is a sport that I personally am interested in. And like, she never said anything about it not being included within the scope of what she's talking about. And again, I'm not going to discuss other sports or other purposes of training if I don't train that myself.
yeah.
Okay.
So you have to recognize that if I share my personal story and my example, it may not fit your situation, but it might fit someone else's. You seemed a little confused about why somebody wouldn't drop your scores. So again, I can only give you my personal example. My very first IGP 1 title, we called it Schutzen at the time. My first Schutzen 1 was with a show bred dog who had show titles and other things. And I will never forget giving the stick to the judge because I was overwhelmed with having done it. It was very unusual for that to happen at that time for that breed. It was very hard because he wasn't bred for it. The score was not high, and I'm so proud of that. I still am. So,
As you should be.
Yeah, it's a good accomplishment
yes,
for sure.
for you might go, yeah, but you squeaked by. It's true, I squeaked by, and I actually got a Schutzen 3 on that dog. I squeaked by, and I'm super proud of that too. And then I had another dog a little further down the road. Her Schutzen 1 was a 292. I got a Schutzen 3 on her. She was never out of the overall. So high scoring dog, and frankly, the relative accomplishment of the first dog was significantly greater than the second dog. And the reason is the second dog was bred for the sport. I started her at 8 weeks of age. I was much more experienced. I knew much more. So, which accomplishment is more impressive? Well, surely you would find the second dog more impressive, but honestly,
Wrong. I would say the first dog is more impressive. And I was in a very similar situation. And I think a lot of people are when they start out in the sport. They kind of find the sport and they make do with what they have. Not everybody, obviously, but a lot of people from my experience and the people that I know and train with, that's often how people start. And then as they get more experience, they get a second dog, they know more. It's that hindsight being 2020, and their experience with their second dog, third, fourth is completely different. But that first dog always holds that special place in their hearts, and the scores in that situation are completely irrelevant. And so I agree with Denise's overall feelings towards that trial and that dog. And I think she's wrong in saying that. I would say the other is.
Yeah, I find them all equally impressive, really. It's just like they're all impressive. Like whether you're just passing with a certain dog or you got high scores or not, they're all equally impressive.
I see lots of people get high scores with hyper talented dogs. I see people go through 10 dogs before they find one they want. I see all kinds of things. What impresses me is probably different than what impresses you. And that's okay. And I mean, you're super fixated on this sport and getting high scores, and then you're asking about force free, but I don't even know why you're asking about it. Like, don't even worry about it. It does not relate to you and your interest.
Okay. I don't even know really what to say about that, because it's just, this is where, and I understand why Denise is frustrated with me. And like I would be too, but this is where it's not just with her and it's not just with me in this specific instance. It's an overall, like at this point in any conversation, this is where things like totally break down and we get to an impasse where it just becomes like you don't understand, or you're commenting to misunderstand, or, you're trying to pick a fight, or you're trying to do this, or, why do you even care about this? And it's like, I think maybe I can't speak for her, but I think she's got me wrong here. Like, I really think that she's just misinterpreting what I'm trying to say, and it's coming across a little bit more heated than I intend it to, because I am curious. And when you talk about dog sports, and you don't purposely not include IGP, I include it because that's my dog sport and it is my interest. And I genuinely do want to constantly expand my knowledge of the sport and of dog training and different methods. And if there is a method that is better than what I'm doing now, across the board or in certain instances, I'm not too stubborn to ignore it. I genuinely want to learn and to know and to expand as a handler and as a trainer. And so when you make claims as a force-free trainer, not just Denise, but in general, saying that you can still achieve high scores, high goals, and do all of this using force-free in dog sport, in IGP, I want to ask you questions and further understand, given my knowledge and my experience, and it's not coming from a place of I'm trying to challenge you. So I do have a genuine interest in this, and I am curious, like who or what the resources are to learn more.
Get your scores, go find somebody who's done that. And don't worry about the force-free part. There's so much to learn about dog training. And then force-free on top of that. And then IGP on top of that. That coming in new is going to be really, really hard unless the force-free aspect is the priority. If the score is the priority, I just think your road is going to be really kind of miserable.
So to me, that's like one or the other. It's like you either care about the scores or you care about force free, and it's mutually exclusive. You can't have both. Right. And so that's where, to me, it's kind of like, well, you're saying then, not just to me, but to anybody, if your goal in IGP is to get the highest scores possible, force free is not for you. Yeah. That's how I interpret that.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can just leave it to other people who already have a basis in force free and maybe who have different people and celebrate their accomplishments for what they are.
Okay. Now, last one. This is a short one.
I think I'm kind of like really getting it now. You're upset because people are saying it's possible and you're not interested in hearing that until you see it. So, okay, got no problem. Which is good.
And to a certain extent, that's true. You know, I do feel like there is something to be said about credibility, you know, being able to stand by what you're saying. You know, if you have a large platform on TikTok and you're a trainer and you're making money in this sport and you're a professional and you're coming from a place of authority and you're telling somebody that this is possible, yet you haven't done it, you don't know anybody who's done it. To me, that's a false claim. You know, so to me personally, it does matter that there's no proof.
Yeah. They've been around a long time. I've watched this process through a lot of dive sports. So do I believe it's possible? No doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind. So here's my question.
I'm not disagreeing with your personal opinion that it's possible.
If somebody does it, somebody wins this top award at some event, then what? I mean, what then? You're not going to be able to get lessons with that person. Probably. Because usually people at the top are exceptionally selective about who they're working with and why. So
not really true.
You're going to just backpedal and say, okay, now that I know it's possible, I'm going to change everything in my training to accommodate that. I got it.
Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit like extremist. You're right. Maybe that person that, you know, wins the WUSV, the top training force free, maybe they're not going to want to give me private lessons. Okay, that's just one like specific instance. I do fundamentally believe personally that if a force-free trainer tomorrow were to genuinely train force-free and win the WUSV, I do think it would be impactful. I think it would be a huge win for the force-free community. I think it would say a lot to the balance trainers. I think it would
be selling themselves for sure.
100% they would. Yeah. And rightly so. Hustle, you know, get that coin. But even on like a smaller scale, I think having the concrete proof and the acknowledgement, the accolades, and knowing that you did that way and everybody else knows that you did that way would help push the force-free community that much further, like she did years ago, and now look where we are. It's the exact same situation. And I think especially with all the buzz that we hear about bite sports, IGP, you know, it seems like, I don't know if it's just my algorithm or what it is, but there's a lot of people that are talking about it. And it seems like a lot of those people are also force-free trainers. And so I do think that it would be beneficial if this were to happen. Now, would everybody overnight change their entire training and their entire methodology? No, and you can't expect that. You know, even today, there's not everybody training force free. There's not everybody training balance. You know, people can make their own choices unless we're talking about, you know, the laws or the rules or, you know, bans and this and that. But in general, I do think it would overall be a positive move for the community.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, you know, you can have a force-free person win the WSV 1 year, then like a balance trainer win it 5 years in a row, or vice versa. Like, you know, it doesn't, one isn't really specific. So
it was not my experience in the obedience world. Nothing changed after people demonstrated it could be done differently. Nothing changed.
I would argue that it has, because she literally just said, 10 years ago, it was different than it is now. So things are changing. It does take time. And I think that a way that change, like one of the change makers, is people actually doing it and showing people and documenting and using these platforms to convince people. Not that you have to convince anybody, but in this world, I think that it would go a long way.
So, for some thought, what are you going to do with that information if it happens? What if a person just does it in obedience? 100 points in obedience, train positively, not the rest of it. What are you going to do with that information? Tracking, 100 points, train positively. What are you going to do with that information? Anything? So if not, then are you just upset because the force free community is saying they believe it's absolutely possible? I will say, I think a lot of people talk too much. A lot of force free people talk about things they don't know what they're talking about.
And I agree with that. It is part of what I guess upsets me is the claims, is the chatter, the constant talking about this is absolutely possible. When you say things absolutely possible, that to me is a strong claim. And if nobody has done it, and if you haven't done it, and if nobody that you've helped train has done it, then how do you know? How do you know with 100% certainty that it is absolutely possible? Now, if we're talking about hypotheticals and my opinion and, these kind of things, that's different. I'm not here to argue anybody's feelings or opinions. I'm here to talk about the facts. And if somebody doesn't matter, even if they're a balance trainer saying it's absolutely possible to do X, Y, Z, but they haven't done it, nobody's done it, it's never been done before, and that's just the facts, I have a hard time really jumping on board. And I personally am the type of person that would like to see that transpire before I jump on the bandwagon.
I'm not going to defend that, and I agree with you. But that's neither here nor there. For your purpose.
But it is here nor there, because when you have people that are force free saying these claims and talking about dog sports that they personally don't compete in or have never competed in, saying that they help clients and their methods work, and all of these things are possible, it seems a little bit far-fetched for me.
Yeah, and they also go to science-based and that kind of thing too, and which is fine. But there's science on both sides of it too. There isn't one specific that really is that makes a definitive what is the best way.
Right. I think overall my stance on it is, the information would say a lot, and there is a big difference between it could be done versus it has been done.
You, as a trainer who wants to accomplish things, what are you going to do with that information? If you find out a person taught one exercise beautifully, no compulsion, start to finish, how does it impact you? I think I'm kind of like...
Well, as a trainer, it doesn't necessarily directly impact me, but that's how trainers grow and evolve. Like Darren said, we're constantly adding tools to our toolbox, not physical tools, but just metaphorically. And that's how people, get the ideas for training methods and ways for exercises, that all builds on each other. And it's so easy with social media and all these different forms to see what other trainers are doing and, have things be a little bit more public and sharing of the information of what works and what doesn't, and getting ideas for certain dogs that have, maybe no food drive or lots of food drive, or, all these different things. As a trainer, it does impact you, maybe not super directly every single time, but overall it does. And maybe not teaching one exercise beautifully would have the biggest impact in comparison to a force-free trainer getting, first place trophy at the WUSV. I keep kind of going back to that because of the original video stating things like winning, success, high scores, and that kind of thing. So that's where I have kind of shaped the conversation. And so again, maybe I've misinterpreted, maybe I've put my own lens on it and, spun things a certain way. But I wanted to talk about this because it's something that Darren and I talk about frequently. It's something that I see on my own pages frequently. And we've been wanting to do an episode on this for a long time. And I was actually really grateful for Denise to post these videos and take the time out of her, I'm sure, busy day to comment back to me and to make videos in response to my comments. It's always appreciated, and I always, enjoy going to her page and seeing her videos and the topics that she brings up because, they're all really good. Overall, I was just kind of summarizing everything and saying how grateful I am for Denise for making these videos. I really do enjoy her content, and I always like hearing the thought-provoking topics that she discusses, especially when they're about bite sports, high drive, like working dogs, dog sports, anything that is like remotely up our alley. Darren and I have these conversations all of the time, and this was a topic that we had wanted to discuss on here for a while now. And so I'm really thankful that Denise posted these videos, and of course took time out of her busy day to comment back to me and make subsequent videos. And it just kind of worked out really well. That we were able to have this conversation thanks to Denise's prompts. And I know she, speaks on behalf of herself, but I do hear these kind of reoccurring themes from other creators on TikTok and social media from the force-free community. And so, she just delivers her point in such an eloquent and concise way that it just made sense to respond to her. But like we said earlier, it's no hate to Denise.
Yeah,
we actually love
recognize
Denise.
She's such an advocate for the force-free community, and
I admire that. I really do.
Her thinking and bringing a lot of things to light. So which brings up a lot of conversations. So which is really good to have. So it's all about conversation and dialogue, right? So.
And that's where, we comment, and I like to be a part of the conversation, whether what I have to say is valuable or not, or appreciated or not. But it's really important that, like Darren said, we have that conversation and we feel we can, be open, and hopefully people's comments back and forth are not coming from, a negative place or attacking. And sometimes it can be a little bit misconstrued on social media, but that's never our personal intention. So, hopefully this conversation was helpful. If you want to be a part of the conversation or have any specific thoughts, by all means, leave them in the comment section below. If you liked this style of video or you have any other IGP or working dog or dog sport related videos or topics that you would like us to respond to or discuss, by all means, leave them down below and we'll be sure to do that. Stay tuned. Yeah. Thanks so much for watching.